Good morning, happy Monday. Everybody probably wants to know on a Monday how to nourish your brain. Your brain pretty much runs the show, right? It does absolutely everything. And what we used to think about the brain was that whatever you got. You know, good luck, deal with it. And now we know that it couldn't be further from the truth, that your brain is neuroplastic. That means it's constantly learning, it's constantly adapting, it's constantly changing. And the cool thing is you can nourish it, right? You can feed it. You might be thinking one way one day, and you can change those thoughts. So if you want to know, okay, what do we do to get our brains to be healthy? Well, your brain lives off of three really vital things. It lives off of movement, electrical activity from your muscles. It lives off of nutrients from the things that you feed your body. And it lives off of course, the air that we breathe. So we're going to want to get those three things in pretty vitally. And the first one, movement, is the most important. Our brain is mostly mechanoreceptor driven. That means movement driven. So you know when babies are developing and they're checking motor skills, they're actually looking at how the brain is developing. Albert Einstein had the largest corpus callosum in the history of the world when they were looking at his brain, because he was highly intelligent, but the movement from side to side in your body is what feeds that and what puts that thing into place. So movement is super important. That's why you feel great when you run outside, you do some exercise, and you feed your brain. Well, here's the thing that people don't realize is that your spine does a lot of that. Your limbs do about 10%, but your spine is in charge of that. So you having a seated occupation, sitting in the classroom, sitting at desks, sitting in front of a television, sitting in front of a screen, on your phone, with your neck just kind of jammed down, you're not feeding your brain. We've got a tired, lethargic society, and it's because we're not moving our bodies enough. You gotta get up, you gotta stretch, you gotta move, you've gotta get out and exercise, and unfortunately, often biking when you're in that same seated position isn't the one that's probably gonna be for you if you have a sedentary occupation. You've gotta move your body, you've got to move your spine. So yoga's awesome. Anything that's gonna use dynamic movements is super great for you. We tell kids to do taekwondo and karate and swimming and rock climbing, to use both sides of the brains as that continues to develop, because we are still making a ton of neurological connections, especially as kids. It's going to slow down a little bit, but we're still making 1 million new ones as adults every year. Birth to 3, we're making that many in a second. 1 million new neurological connections in a second. So don't leave your baby sitting in a car seat, in a stroller, in those infant carriers where they can't move their body and they can't move their spine and they're not upright and looking around. We've got to move our bodies a lot more. That's highly, highly important to feeding the brain. Those electrical impulses are key. The second one, nutrients. What lines those beautiful electrical impulses and those cells that are feeding your brain is fat. You need omega-3s. You need something that's going to be able to coat those and speed up the electrical impulses. Get some omega-3s in your diet. Nutrients are highly important. Feed yourself a healthy organic diet. I mean, all the things that you know, but omega-3s are huge, and magnesium is huge. Those calcium magnesium channels inside of our brain need to be opened up. Get some magnesium, especially at night, an hour before you go to bed. Please feed your brain and your nervous system what it needs. And thirdly, of course, fresh air. I mean, you've got to be able to breathe, and exercise is one of those things that's going to increase that capacity. But your brain, as you know, is a huge energy suck. It sucks up 25% of our nutrients, of our air, and it starts to affect, when that isn't getting what it needs, it's going to start to affect other organs and glands. And here's a really cool thing that we were doing this weekend when we were studying the research, and we got to listen to researchers, which is super exciting for me. And we talked about how the brain is working. And many of you might know this, but your prefrontal cortex is what inhibits the fight or flight response. So that's the front part of your brain. That is the rational, cognitive creative side of your brain, this is what we want that's in control. And if you've ever seen the little flip the lid analogy, your hindbrain is the fight or flight response. That's your amygdala. That starts to run the show when there's too much stress and when your prefrontal cortex isn't being activated. You aren't giving it what it needs. You aren't moving your body. And we know now through the research, when you are getting a chiropractic adjustment, it is only stimulating that prefrontal cortex and helping inhibit that amygdala from that fight or flight response, because during adjustments, your body wasn't moving right. Those muscles in and around the spinal cord and the brain, they've got to be able to send information back to your brain to say, here's where I'm at, because we can never see our spine. We talk about this all the time. You've got to rely on the eyes of the spine. And when they're moving and they're being triggered off, your brain knows, oh, it's getting nice, healthy movement. And about 90% of what our brain does at any given moment is just that. Balance, proprioception. It has to know where it's at. We really take for granted what it takes to move our bodies and be organized, because we start to lack limb awareness. We start to lack where we're at in time and space. That's when we're falling. That's when we lose our balance. That's when we're wear and tearing on our joints. Because we can't actually organize that precision that it needs. And we've all seen unorganized kids, and we've all seen clumsy kids and adults. But when we see that, we know that the brain isn't getting fed well. So make sure you're moving your body, make sure you're eating the right nutrients, make sure you're getting omega-3s, some magnesium, and get your heart rate up, because it needs oxygen to feed that thing and to be able to nourish it the right way. And of course, I'm not going to mention it here, but at the end, we've got a segment coming up. We're talking about emotional health and feeding it the right thoughts. I'll talk to you guys soon.